Islam and greetings. Princeanaelbey, Divine Prince of the Divine Theocracy, from the Moorish Science Temple of America through Temple Alhambra. I was asked to answer this question. The question is, what did the Moors do in Sicily? The short answer, anything we wanted. But no, before you get the wrong idea. The Moors, we like Sicily. We like the Sicilian people. We amalgamated with them and all these good things. And we even showed the Sicilians how to protect themselves from would-be invaders. Because you see, this was the state of the island of Sicily. Sicily was the whipping boy for anybody who had any plans on raiding any island in the Mediterranean. Well, there was Sicily. Now, we raided Sicily, but we raided Sicily. And besides, we didn't take everything from the people and leave them with nothing. That's not what we did when we raided. We would never take the very last of any people. We were civilized. The Sicilian people, they're wonderful people. Very wonderful people. Well, once we learned that the onslaughts on Sicily were relentless, what we did was we showed the Sicilians how to protect themselves with a guerrilla army. This guerrilla army, it was headed by men who owned land and men of substance and such, landowners mostly. And we made them like the generals. And from the shepherd boy in the, right off of the water in Castellamare, all the way to the little girl who worked in the shop with her grandmother in Palermo. Well, these men whom we chose to head these little bands of guerrillas, they were effective, and they were never to allow anyone who was not Sicilian to know that they even existed, because it would blow the whole thing. If an enemy came knowing that there were Sicilians who were ready to busy and harass them and make their visit there most unpleasant, it wouldn't have worked out too well for the Sicilians. What we taught them was to keep your mouth shut about this. No one even knows you exist. The Sicilians became quite adept at repelling would-be invaders. Now, these men and these guerrilla organizations, once the invasion stopped, because when we would go back to visit the Sicilians, we would get all the stories. We would get all the stories. Even when the Romans came, we'd get all the stories. And when there were no more would-be invaders to Sicily, these men, they did not relinquish their power. They did not relinquish their power. Instead, what was once used as a pretty much guaranteed protection of the island of Sicily, all of a sudden, it turned into the scourge of Sicily. Because it turned into what later became known as the mafia. But before it became known as the mafia, it had an ancient name. The name was Masnadieri, and the members were called Masnadi. We left the Sicilians. That was a legacy we left the Sicilians. And from what real story tells us, they made pretty good use of it too. Pretty much everywhere they went, especially in the United States. However, our cousins, because that is who the Sicilians are, the Sicilians are our cousin. They have our blood in them. They are our actual physical cousins. They simply dwell in another land. But their blood, they certainly are. And so, yes, we grew quite fond of the Sicilians. Grew quite fond of them. And we taught them how to protect themselves. And then they got really, really good at it. But that's just one of the legacies that we left the Sicilians. Most of the best that could have come out of Sicily was never allowed to. Was never allowed to. And that is why you do not have an entire hall in an art museum somewhere full of Sicilian artists. Oh, they were there. They were there. They just got Edisoned. And when I use the term Edisoned, I am talking about Thomas Alva Edison and what he did to Nikola Tesla. He Edisoned him. The Sicilians got Edisoned. Because there were some very good artisans in Sicily. Singers. The world never got to know half of them. Never got to know half of them. And that was the question that I got, or the request to expound on the relationship between the Moors and the Sicilian. We love the Sicilian people. They're family. And what are you going to do? They're family. They're family. Now, let me share this with you. While you may have heard, seen, probably know firsthand, the sentiment that those in the Mediterranean have towards the Asiatic of Northwest Africa. Well, let me share this with you. And prayerfully you have learned something about racism, such as it never existed. The Sicilian, the Italian, especially the Mediterranean Italian, well, for the most part, they know who you are. And when you hear them talk about you in your present state, as a black person or an African American person here in your own land, yeah, they're going to talk about you most negatively because they remember who you were. You don't know. You have never been told anything about you or the people you come from. So there is no way in this world that you would ever garner any pride in yourself. You were never told that your people were the premier astronomers, physicians, etc. You were never told these things. You were never taught about individuals, their accomplishments, and their contributions. You were never taught these things. What you were taught was a whole bunch of lies. Now, let me demonstrate to you how easy thinking is once you employ it. Question: who do they say is the father of mathematics? Now, we've all heard the name, right? Who do they say is the father of mathematics? Why, that would be Pappy Pythagoras, wouldn't it? Now, he's the father of mathematics. Now, what that says is he invented mathematics. Because when you are the father of something, you help create it and bring it to manifest. So, now Pythagoras is the father of mathematics, right? I got a question. I got a couple of questions. The first question is, how old was Pythagoras? That's my first question. And the reason I ask how old Pythagoras was is because you see those pyramids down in Barbara that people think is Egypt. Those pyramids down in Barbara, either Pythagoras was around when they were being constructed, or the people who actually built them did not use any mathematics. Now, which of those is it that you want me to believe? Pythagoras is that old? Or that the people who built the pyramids didn't use mathematics? It's common sense, people. Think. Think. Don't just take in everything you hear. Think. Because nonsense should not make sense to you. It just shouldn't. Nonsense should not make sense to you. And that's nonsense. Now, I love the Greek people. I truly do. And again, it is against my religion to use assertions against any group of people. It's against, it's against my religion and it's against the law. But I am bound by those same laws to tell the truth. And the Greeks, during the period they claimed Pythagoras fathered mathematics, they did not have the cranial capacity to create anything except wrestling. But all that takes is brute strength. There is no exercising of the cerebrum in wrestling then. Not like it would take to create mathematics or the science of putting numbers together to determine this, that, and the other, and an outcome of something else. Pythagoras could not have fathered mathematics. He did not. He did not have the cranial capacity as a Greek, for starters. They were not creators. The Greeks were not creators. So either Pythagoras' age is old, or the people who actually built the pyramid did not use math. One of those have got to be true. One of those have got to be true. And you see, since I know that Pythagoras is not ages old, and that the odd people, because that's who built the pyramid, the odd people did use mathematics. They used what's called celestial math. And I'm wondering how many mathematicians on earth understand celestial math. I'm going to have to ask one again. So the next time you hear about the Greeks creating something, especially about Pythagoras, and then you have, oh yes, the father of medicine, good old Hippocrates. Now what I know for a fact is Hippocrates was not around when we were doing delicate eye surgery. Hippocrates, his relatives were still in the caves in Russia when we were doing delicate eye surgery and vivisections. So none of that is true. None of it. Pythagoras is not the father of mathematics. And there are no such people. Well, that's another lesson for another day. But I was asked a question, or given a statement to answer, and I hope that I did answer it. And that was fun. Islam all. Peace.